When the plane wheels hit the tarmac, I thought my chest would finally stop hurting, but it didn't. It just shifted, like the ache had moved from my ribs to the hollow place in my heart where 8 years of sand, smoke, and silence had made a home. Texas looked smaller through the airplane window, the same way childhood houses do when you return after too long. I remembered it being warmer, louder, alive. Now everything looked tired, like me. I hadn't been back since my father's funeral. 8 years, 3 deployments, 1 honorable discharge, and a lifetime's worth of ghosts. The Army taught me how to survive, not how to come home. They taught me how to fight, not how to forgive. I thought maybe Christmas would make it easier, that the lights and cold air and cinnamon smell of old diners would fill the cracks. But when I stepped off the plane and felt the sting of December wind bite my skin, I realized there's no such thing as peace for someone like me. The drive from Fort Worth to Bowie Creek was long and empty. Just me, a rented Silverado, and miles of frozen asphalt stretching toward the past. I watched the horizon fade from city lights to black nothingness, the road curling through pine woods that whispered like old secrets. The radio played a Christmas carol I used to sing with Dad, and I had to shut it off before the memories clawed too deep. He died while I was overseas, a sudden heart attack, or so they said. I didn't get to bury him. I didn't get to say goodbye. My mother wrote that he was proud of me, that he watched the news every night searching for my face among the soldiers they never named. But even in her letter, I could feel the distance, like something in her words had gone cold. When I finally turned down the long dirt road to the Cole family farmhouse, the sight of it nearly stopped my heart. The old white siding was grayer now, sagging like an old man's shoulders. The oak tree out front, the one Dad planted when Luke and I were born, had lost most of its branches. A single string of Christmas lights hung half dead along the porch, blinking weakly in the fog. It was supposed to feel like home, but it didn't. It felt like a grave that someone forgot to bury. I parked the truck, cut the engine, and sat there for a while, watching the light in the kitchen flicker through the blinds. There was movement inside. Shadows, soft and quick. I told myself it was just Mom and Luke, that they'd be happy to see me after all this time. But deep down, a small, trained part of my brain, the part that still knew how to read danger, started to whisper that something wasn't right. I grabbed my duffel, slung it over my shoulder, and walked up the steps, boots crunching the frost. The porch groaned beneath me. When I pushed open the screen door, it made that same squeal I remembered from when I was 10 and used to sneak out at night to catch fireflies. "Mom?" I called, voice echoing through the quiet. No answer. The air smelled like whiskey and mildew. The living room looked frozen in time. The same brown couch, the same family photos, except half of them were gone. The Christmas tree leaned to one side, lights dim like it had been decorated by someone who didn't care. My stomach turned when I noticed 2 glasses on the table, half filled with bourbon and an ashtray full of crushed cigarettes. Someone was awake. "Mom?" I said again, stepping toward the kitchen. That's when I heard it. A voice. Low, rough, familiar. My brother's. "She's back," he said. "I saw her truck at the gate." A pause. Then my mother's voice, trembling. "You said she wouldn't come. You said we were safe." "Relax," Luke replied. "We'll take care of it." I froze. The words didn't make sense. Not at first. I leaned closer, pressing my ear to the door. "She doesn't know anything," my mother whispered. "She doesn't have to," Luke said, his tone flat, empty. "She'll be gone soon, just like Dad." My heart stopped. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard him. Maybe he meant gone as in leaving town, not dead. But the way he said it, the same way I'd heard soldiers talk before they did something they couldn't undo, told me everything I needed to know. My legs went weak. I backed away slowly, careful not to make a sound, my body running on the kind of fear you don't feel until it's too late. I wanted to burst in there, scream, demand to know what they meant, but that voice in my head, the one that kept me alive overseas, told me to wait. Listen first, move later. The floor creaked, and I heard footsteps. I turned and slipped out the back door, breath catching in my throat. The outdoor air hit me like a slap, sharp and freezing. I stumbled down the porch steps, boots sinking into the mud, and made it to my truck before I let myself breathe again. My reflection in the window looked like someone else, eyes wide, pale, terrified. My family, my own blood, plotting something against me. It didn't make sense, but neither did war. And I'd learned that when people are desperate, they do things they can't come back from. I sat in the driver's seat for hours, watching the house through the windshield. Around midnight, Luke shadow passed by the kitchen window, tall and slow, carrying something long and metallic, a shovel. I watched him disappear into the dark toward the fields, and when he didn't return, I knew this wasn't paranoia. It was truth. Something was buried on that land that my father had died for, and I was next on their list. The morning after that night felt like waking inside someone else's dream, the kind that looks almost normal until you notice the shadows are moving wrong. Frost covered the porch rail like powdered glass, and the sky was the color of steel. I hadn't slept at all. I sat in my truck until sunrise, watching thin smoke curl from the chimney and wondering how long my family had been strangers to me. When I finally walked inside, my mother was at the stove, pretending to make breakfast. The smell of bacon and coffee should have been comforting, but it only made me sick. "You're up early," she said without turning around. Her voice trembled just enough to tell me she hadn't expected me to still be alive. I forced a smile, sat down at the table, and said, "Couldn't sleep." She nodded, her hand shaking as she poured coffee into a chipped mug, the same one that used to say "World's Best Dad" before the paint faded. For a long minute, the only sound was the hiss of the pan. Then I said, "Luke out working already?" The spatula clattered against the skillet. "Yes," she whispered. "He went out early." I studied her face. There were dark circles under her eyes, the kind you don't get from age or worry, but from guilt. I wanted to ask what they'd done, why they'd turned on me, but fear can make even a mother lie to save herself. So I ate in silence, pretending everything was normal, while my brain replayed every word I'd heard the night before. After breakfast, I told her I was going into town to check the hardware store for a part to fix the truck. She nodded too quickly, relieved. Outside, the cold air tasted clean compared to the staleness inside that house. I drove into Bowie Creek, parts near the courthouse, and sat for a moment before going in. The same clerk who'd processed Dad's estate years ago was behind the desk, Jenna Lewis, an old friend from high school who used to sit next to me in chemistry. She gasped when she saw me. "Serena Cole, you're kidding me. I thought you were still overseas." I smiled, or tried to. "Got back a few days ago. I just needed to check something about our property records." "Sure thing." She typed a few keys, then frowned. "Huh. Luke was just here yesterday, actually. Said y'all were transferring ownership." I felt my stomach drop. "Transferring?" "Yeah. Looked like you signed off last month." She turned the screen toward me, and there it was. My name, neat and perfect on an electronic deed that sold the entire Cole property to a company I didn't recognize. My hand went cold on the counter. "Can you print that?" I asked, my voice flat. She hesitated, but hit the button anyway. When she handed me the page, I saw Luke's signature below mine, and a date from 3 weeks after my last deployment ended, while I was still waiting for discharge papers in Kuwait. A forged signature, a sale I never approved. "Who bought it?" I asked. Jenna glanced down. "Some investment group out of Dallas? They paid cash, said they'd be developing the land." My father's land. The same acres he'd sworn would never leave our name. I thanked her, folded the paper, and walked out before my knees gave out. I didn't need to think long to know why they'd forged my name. The Cole land wasn't just sentimental, it was valuable. There were rumors since we were kids about something buried near the creek, an old Confederate stash or oil rights, stories Dad always laughed off. But right before he died, he wrote me a letter, one I'd never understood until now. If anything happens to me, the creek will take care of you. I thought he meant peace. He'd meant the truth. I drove back toward the property, but turned off at the old bridge that crossed Bowie Creek. The air down there smelled like wet iron, and the current ran low from the winter drought. I parked, got out of my truck, and walked along the bank. That's when I saw them, fresh tire tracks pressed into the mud, and 3 uneven pits half filled with water and loose dirt. Someone had been digging recently, and not for fence posts. Kneeling, I ran my fingers through the wet earth and hit something metallic. A rusted shovel head, snapped off clean. I stared at it, heart pounding, and suddenly I could see it all. Luke and some partner digging through the night, desperate, maybe even before Dad died, looking for something that wasn't meant to be found. And Dad? Maybe he caught them. Maybe that's why he had a heart attack. I stood up fast, wiping the mud from my hands, my breath clouding in front of me. I was shaking, not from cold, but from rage. They'd killed him, sold our land, and when I came home, they realized I could ruin everything. That's why they whispered about me being gone soon. They weren't afraid of me. They were afraid of what I'd find. When I got back to the house, the sun was already dipping low, bleeding gold through the trees. Luke's truck was gone, but my mother sat on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. She looked small, like the house had been draining her life one day at a time. "Mom," I said, stepping up the porch. She flinched, like I hit her. "You need to tell me the truth," I said quietly. "About Dad, about the land, about Luke." Tears welled in her eyes. "Serena, please don't. Tell me." Her lips trembled. "Your father didn't have a heart attack," she whispered. "Luke found out about the creek, about what your father was hiding. He thought it was gold, money. He said it was our chance to start over. They argued that night. I heard shouting, then a crash, and when I came in, your father was on the floor. Luke said it was an accident, that he'd fallen, but then he made me swear to keep quiet. He said if I didn't, he'd say you killed him." The world tilted. I had been thousands of miles away when Dad died, but somehow Luke had still used me as his alibi. "He sold the land," she nodded, crying now. "And now he's digging for what's left. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because he said he'd kill you if you ever came back." My chest felt like it was cracking open. "It's too late," I whispered. Headlights turned into the drive then, blinding us both. Luke's truck. My mother grabbed my arm. "Serena, run." But I didn't. I just stood there watching the lights crawl up the porch, my heart steady now, calm in the way it only gets before a firefight. I'd spent years at war, and I was about to go to war again, only this time it was in my own home. The crunch of Luke's tires on the gravel sounded like gunfire in the cold evening air, slow and deliberate, each rotation bringing the past closer. I could feel the years between us collapsing into the length of that driveway. My mother's nails dug into my sleeve as if she could hold me in place with guilt alone, whispering, "Please, Serena, don't make it worse." But there was nothing left that could still get worse. I stepped off the porch before the truck stopped moving, boots sinking into the mud, heart thudding with the same dull rhythm it had in Baghdad before every raid. Luke climbed out, his breath fogging in the headlights, and for a second, I saw the brother I'd once known, the kid who built toy forts with me in the field, who cried when our dog died. But then the light hit his face full on, and what looked back was a man hollowed out by greed. "You should have stayed gone," he said. I didn't answer. He took a step closer, coat flapping in the wind, one hand behind his back. "Mom told you, didn't she, about Dad, about the land?" I could taste the metal of fear on my tongue. "She told me enough," I said. "You killed him." His jaw twitched.
He wasn't gonna let us have it. He was gonna die sooner or later. The calm in his voice made my skin crawl. And me? I asked. You forged my name, sold everything, and what? Figured if I turned up you'd just bury me with the rest of the family secrets? He gave a slow smile that didn't reach his eyes. Don't talk like a soldier now. You're home. There's no enemy here. He pulled the revolver from his jacket. Unless you make one. The sound of my mother sobbing behind me cut through the cold. Luke, please, she begged. Don't do this. He didn't even look at her. He pointed the gun at my chest. The distance between us was less than 20 feet, too close for mercy, too far for hope. I'd been in ambushes. I'd watched men kill for less than a patch of sand. But watching my own brother raise a weapon at me made the world go silent in a way even war never could. You don't have to do this, I said. Dad left that land for both of us. You could have asked. He didn't leave it for both of us, Luke snapped. He left it for you. You were always the favorite, the hero, the one he bragged about while I was fixing his damn fences. His voice cracked on the last word, rage and self-pity spilling out together. I took a slow breath, remembering every command I'd ever given to calm a soldier with a gun in his hand. You think killing me will fix that? I asked. It'll fix everything, he said. Then he cocked the hammer. Time fractured. My body moved before thought, training, instinct, survival. I dove to the side as he fired. The shot tore through the porch rail, splinters flying past my face. I hit the ground hard, mud soaking my jeans, rolled behind the truck and heard him cursing. Another shot split the night, this one whining off the fender. My mother screamed again. I reached for the glove box where I'd stashed Dad's old hunting knife, the only thing I'd brought home from the war that wasn't a scar. And when I felt the handle in my palm, something in me hardened. I crawled beneath the truck, mud clinging to my hair, watching Luke's boots stomp past. Come out, soldier girl. Let's see if you're as tough without your uniform. I waited until his shadow passed the rear bumper, then slid out the other side and rose behind him. The knife glinted in the dim light. Don't, I said. He turned fast, gun swinging toward me, and I lunged, knocking his wrist aside. The shot went wild, echoing across the fields. We struggled, slipping in the mud, grunting, swearing, the world reduced to breath and noise and fury. He was stronger, heavier, fueled by hate, but I'd fought worse men in darker places. I slammed my knee into his ribs. He roared, slammed his elbow into my jaw, stars bursting behind my eyes. The gun fell, spinning into the ditch. We both went for it. He got there first. I grabbed his wrist again, twisting until something cracked. He screamed. The gun went off between us, the flash blinding. For a second, I thought I'd been hit, but it was him. The bullet had grazed his shoulder. He staggered back, eyes wide, shock turning to fury. You think you can beat me? He spat. You left. You abandoned this family. I raised the knife. No, Luke, I said, breathless. You killed it. He came at me then, roaring, and we collided, the blade finding soft flesh. His body went rigid, the sound that came out of him halfway between a gasp and a sigh. I stepped back, shaking, the knife slick and red in my hand. He looked down at the wound, confusion clouding his eyes like a child waking from a bad dream. Rena, he whispered. No one had called me that since we were kids. Then his legs buckled, and he fell forward into the mud. My mother's cry split the night. I dropped the knife, my hands trembling. Mom, I whispered, but she was already on her knees beside him, cradling his head, rocking back and forth like she could undo it if she just held on tight enough. He was my son, she sobbed, and he was my brother, I said, voice hollow. But he chose this. The red from his blood crept through the dirt, sliding down toward the creek. I watched it mixed with the water, swirling away under the moonlight, and realized the legend was true after all. The creek did hold the family's inheritance, only it wasn't gold. It was blood. The sirens came before dawn. Someone must have heard the shots. I didn't run this time. When the deputies arrived, I told them everything except the parts that would haunt Mom forever. They called it self-defense, wrote their reports, took Luke's body, and left behind a silence that was louder than gunfire. Days later, when the investigators were gone and the funeral was over, I went down to the creek alone. The frost had melted, the ground was soft again. I dug where the tire marks had been, half hoping to find treasure, half hoping for nothing at all. The shovel hit metal after a few minutes. My breath caught. I cleared the dirt until I saw it, an old ammunition box rusted shut. Inside were a few bundles of cash, a locket with my father's initials, and a folded note. The paper was brittle, ink smudged, but the words were clear. If you're reading this, Serena, then the land has taken what it needed. You can't save what was never meant to be kept. Let the creek have its due and start over. I sat there until the sun came up, the water murmuring beside me, washing the last of the red away. When I went back to the house, Mom was gone, left a note saying she couldn't stay where her son had died. I didn't blame her. I packed what little was mine, locked the door, and stood on the porch one last time. The Christmas lights still hung there, burned out, swaying in the wind. I took them down, wrapped them around my hand until the bulbs pressed into my skin, a reminder of how fragile light can be. Then I got in the truck and drove away. The fields rolling past in pale dawn colors, the creek glinting behind me like a scar that would never fade. People talk about war as something that happens far away, across oceans and deserts, but they don't know the truth. War follows you home. It hides in bloodlines and old grudges, in the places you once felt safe. I survived Iraq, but Bowie Creek was where I finally learned what it costs to come home.